We're in Mosul, the second biggest city in Iraq. The armed forces have just taken back the eastern part of the city from ISIS jihadists. Mosul, the self-proclaimed and symbolic capital of the Islamic State. Everywhere, people seem relieved. General Abdel Ghani al-Assadi is relishing his role as liberator.
Let him through, let him through. My pleasure.
When was this neighborhood liberated?
5 days ago, and you can see how the population welcomes our soldiers. They greet us with smiles and joy. Give me a cigarette. You know, when you're greeted with a child's smile, with his innocence, you can't be happier. And that's why I'm going to smoke one.
ISIS reigned over Mosul for more than 2 years. And at the head of the organization was Abu Bakr al Baghdadi. Here he reigned with terror without even appearing in person. Secret, invisible, elusive. Yet he left his mark everywhere. In this house was one of the headquarters of his organization. What is this book? An ISIS book?
Yes, look, that's their flag.
His followers say that al-Baghdadi is a scholar, that he knows the Quran perfectly.
A scholar, yeah, right. He alters the Quranic texts and the precepts of Islam. Islam does not endorse this kind of rule. Islam says no to violence, no to hatred. They have distorted everything.
Who is this man who terrorizes the whole world? A man who no one had heard of just 3 years ago. A man behind the attacks in Paris, Nice, Brussels and Berlin.
J'ai fait allégeance au calife dès la déclaration du califat. أبايع أمير المؤمنين Abu Bakr al Baghdadi al-Qurayshi.
Amedi Coulibaly, the Montrouge killer and the hyper-catcher attacker in Paris in 2015. Kemish and Petitjean, the assassins of a French priest in an attack last July, killed in his name. We followed the trail of the man who became the new Bin Laden, but even more barbaric. Al-Baghdadi surpassed the mastermind of 9/11 by acquiring a vast territory and an army of up to 50,000 men. A high-tension investigation during which our team was threatened.
The man on the phone told me he could kill us at any time, and with my car's license number, they can catch me outside my home.
It is dangerous to ask too many questions about a man who is trying to remain invisible. Even his soldiers nicknamed him Al-Shabaab, the Ghost. There is only one known video of him, a propaganda video.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
During our investigation, we discovered unpublished photographs of the master of ISIS. We went to Iraq, to Lebanon, to Jordan, and to the United States. We found his ex-wife and his daughter.
أنا بقول إنه شو ذنب هالطفلة؟ يعني شو ذنبها بتتعاقب على إنه هي العفو بنت أكبر رجل يعادي العالم.
In prison, we were able to talk to his former sister-in-law, a suicide bomber who was arrested just before she blew herself up.
قال لي رح تقتلين 200 نفر، أنا قلت لك كلش قليل هال 200 نفر، خلي أكثر أحسن. قال قديش تريدي؟ قلت له 1000 واحد مقابل زوجي.
We followed his journey from small stranded jihadist to the undisputed leader of ISIS.
المعلومات اللي كانت متوفرة أنه هو البغدادي كان موجود بالكم السادس.
لكن ما كنت أتصور أنه هذا الإنسان اللي كان يخطبنا فيه أبوك في الكم السادس يتحول إلى إنسان آخر، يعني اختلاف باستطاعتنا أن نقول جذري، اختلاف جذري.
Portrait of the Caliph of Terror, the man with a €23 million bounty on his head. July 4th, 2014, in the Grand Mosque of Mosul. This was the first time that the leader of ISIS appeared in public. It is also the only existing video of him. These propaganda images were shot by ISIS's communication department. The aim was to announce to the world that Abu Bakr al Baghdadi is no longer a warlord, but a head of state, the head of the Islamic State. On that day, he proclaimed himself caliph, the leader of all Muslims.
وإن إخوانكم المجاهدين قد من الله تبارك وتعالى عليهم بنصر وفتح فسارعوا إلى إعلان الخلافة وتنصيب إمام، وهذا واجب على المسلمين، والذين يأثمون أي يأثم المسلمون بتضييعه وتغييبه، وعليهم أن يسعوا دائما لإقامته.
We found a journalist from Mosul who lived under the caliph's rule.
أهلا وسهلا فيك.
صوفيا،
كيفك؟
شو أخبارك؟
الحمد لله.
تفضلي.
She has since fled the city. Her husband was in the mosque that day. He told her everything.
هم جاءوا يصلون لا يعرفون من جاء بهم، من هو اللي دخل فجأة وأصبح في الهذلان. طبعا لا وجود إلى خطيب الجمعة هون، لا وجود له في هذاك النهار، اختفى، ما نعرف ايش صار له.
3 weeks earlier, ISIS had conquered the city. In the mosque that day, the faithful were witnessing firsthand a coup d'etat.
إنه هو مسيطر أو إنه هو المحبوب عند أهالي الموصل، لكن كلها ممنهجة بالسلاح ومحمي هو بالسلاح، تحت سطوة السلاح دخله. شوفين يعني كلها وقفت حماية مع عند الركوع تلاحظين هذه الحماية، هناك حماية، هذا حماية، شوفي هذا العمود، هذا الحماية.
It's ISIS's propaganda office that has blurred out their men.
شوفي السلاح الأمن من داعش.
يعني أبو بكر البغدادي.
So for Baghdadi to pray, he needs weapons and protection?
نعم.
He's not sure of himself in Mosul?
طبعاً قطعت الاتصالات الآسيسيل والكورك والإنترنت، لا يوجد أي اتصال في الموصل حتى تأمينه في هذاك الوقت عندما دخل الجامع، ولم يقدر أي شخص من أهالي الموصل أن يصوره، ممنوع، لأن لا يوجد تحرك خوف.
In an icy silence, al-Baghdadi is about to speak.
طبعاً هون هاي إيده دا يأمن كيف صعد الدرج، وهذه دا يأمن على السلاح، هاي إيده تحتها سلاح مسلح نفسه.
وإن أردتم موعود الله فجاهدوا في سبيل الله وحرضوا المؤمنين واصبروا على تلك المشقة.
وفعلاً خطبته كانت كل كلمة تدل على أفعاله، لم يعدنا بالنعيم لكن وعدنا بالقتال وبما يسمونه الجهاد.
Al-Baghdadi became the spokesperson for jihad throughout the world. An unimaginable destiny for those who knew him in his youth when he was poor and introverted. His story begins in Samarra, an hour's drive from Baghdad. On arrival, we encountered many well-armed soldiers. This area is dangerous and is regularly hit by terrorist attacks. For our safety, a patrol will accompany us.
تقريبا قبل أسبوع حاولوا يدخلون مركز شرطة يعني انتحارين والحمد لله تم القضاء عليهم. وعلى هذا بيت هذا أبو بكر البغدادي.
Our escort takes us to his childhood home, which was deserted by the family of al Baghdadi when the Caliphate was declared, out of fear of retaliation. The door is padlocked. The soldiers have to force it to get us in. The men are wary. They check that the house is not booby-trapped. This is the place where Abu Bakr al Baghdadi grew up. He was born here in January 1971. The size of the house is deceptive. The home is actually very modest. His parents were illiterate farmers.
كانت هذه غرفة حسب ما علمنا من سكان المنطقة من هذه كانت الغرفة يتواجد بها دائما أبو بكر البغدادي.
He lived here until his teenage years before going back and forth to Baghdad to go to college. We meet a neighbour who knew him for a long time. Just behind the house, he takes us to a football field, the first passion of the future caliph. He knew him by his real name, Ibrahim Awad al-Badri.
هاي كانت ساحة كرة قدم إبراهيم العواد الملقب أبو بكر البغدادي كان مسوي فريق اسمه فريق الملالي وهسه حاليا هو قاعد يتعاون يعني ضد ما كان هو يسوي.
The mullahs, because al-Baghdadi and his team were Salafists. Football and religion used to be compatible in his eyes. Today, playing with a ball is a crime in territories controlled by the Islamic State. Later, he began teaching religion to young people in this mosque, next to the football field. Inside, we meet the sheikh, who bears the same name as al-Badri. He is a member of the same tribe. He remembers a young man who dreamed of becoming an imam.
هو هنا نعلمه من هو طفل لان بيتهم هنا شفتي انت بس احنا كنا نقدمه امامي لان كان صوته حلو بالقران هو حافظ اي فكنا هنا احنا يعني
مرات عديده
يعني حتى من قال هو صاير الامير ما صدقنا لان فقير
اي والله فقير
والله فقير يعني ما يدرج بس من قال قلت بكذب ما صدق هذا.
A poor, normal boy. His relatives didn't find that he had a taste for violence. Al-Baghdadi finishes high school. We were able to get a copy of his results. Above, his photo ID, aged 18. He had excellent results in maths, 98 out of 100. On the other hand, he is an average student in all other subjects, too average to study law as he had hoped. He therefore signed up to the only college that accepted him in Baghdad, studying theology. He settles in Topchi, a poorer area of the capital. It is dangerous to film here. ISIS has eyes and ears in the area. And then there are the Shiite militias who terrorize the city. A few days before we film, an Iraqi journalist was abducted from her home. After his arrival, Abu Bakr al Baghdadi frequented this mosque, which became almost his second home.
It is forbidden to film. You need authorization from the Ministry of the Interior.
Do you know why it's forbidden?
Why? Because we received orders.
The security forces fear that the mosque will become a pilgrimage site for followers of the caliph, or that his enemies will commit an attack. A few steps away is his old apartment. It's this house here?
Yes, this house.
He lived here?
Yes.
On the walls, a graffitied message reads, "Man wanted by the tribes." A threat directly addressed to al-Baghdadi by the important families in the region that he has harmed. We found a man who knew the future caliph at the time and who agreed to talk to us, but behind closed doors. He witnessed the transformation of the young Abu Bakr al Baghdadi.
فترة الشباب الإنسان لطيف وشباب ويلعب طوبة، فاعتيادي لطيف يعني هو. بس بعدين قلت لك انطوى على نفسه انه صار انطواء، وكان يعني راسا يتنرفز، يعني ترك من كرة القدم للألعاب الحياة الحلوة إلى أن توجه إلى توجه خاطئ، توجه ضال يدعو إلى يعني الكبت للحياة، أنه الحياة تحولها إلى كبت، إلى معاناة، إلى أنه هذا حرام وهذا بصورة صعبة، كلش صعب الأمور علينا.
The man even remembers his first episodes of violence.
فهد شاف عرس، يعني عرس قدامه، فتعارك وياهم، سوى لفت مشكلة أنه ما يصير تخالط الجنسين، ما يجوز، هذا حرام، هذا ما يقبل به الإسلام، ما يقبل به الدين. فصارت مشكلة في ذاك الوقت، لأن الناس كانت أنه ما عندها، الناس تدق وترقص ومتونسين ولا هم أقرباء، يعني هو عرس مال أقرباء بنفس المنطقة.
In a few years, the young football fan became a convicted Islamist. And a chain of events eventually tipped him over the edge.
Wow! Oh.
After September 11th, 2001, the United States claimed that Iraq was partly responsible for the attacks and that Saddam Hussein was a threat to the Western world. On March 20th, 2003, President George W. Bush, with a family portrait on the desk, declared war.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
In just a few weeks, Saddam Hussein's army was destroyed. But in response to the US invasion, dozens of armed groups, most of them jihadists, were building up and fighting back. The most formidable, Al-Qaeda, in Iraq, under the control of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. The number of attacks increases. More often, these are suicide bombers who drive towards their targets in vehicles filled with explosives. At the time, Abu Bakr al Baghdadi still lived in Topchi. This Islamist became a jihadist. He created his own small group which performed attacks on a limited scale. One of the leaders of the anti-American insurgency can now be found in Amman, Jordan. We met him in a small neighborhood mosque. At the end of prayers, he invited us to his home. In 2003, he founded the Iraqi Islamic Army, a jihadist group that committed numerous attacks and published propaganda videos on the internet like this one. He also took Western hostages, including French journalists Christian Chesneau and Georges Malbrunot. He spent 6 years in prison in Iraq before being released on the condition that he left the country. Dabash knew leaders of the anti-American guerrillas well, including the most powerful leader, Zarqawi. But according to him at the time, al-Baghdadi was just a minion.
لم يكن ظاهرا في تلك الفترة. أنا إمام وخطيب جامع وإحنا كان 15 مسجد فمعروفين أئمة خطباء هذه المساجد. هو رجل مضمور يعني رجل ثاني ما معروف يعني يجوز بسلم عليه أنا ما أعرف أنه هذا فلان يعني. إحنا نقول 2003 عندما بدأت المقاومة كان هناك معرفة لهذه الفصائل. بقية الفصائل الأخرى الصغيرة اللي أيضا لها دور كبير ومتميز معروفة بقياداته. أبو بكر لم يعرف أنه أحد هذه القيادات.
According to Dabash, one particular stage in the life of al-Baghdadi took him from having a background role in the jihad to taking center stage.
في بوكا هو تربى في مدرسة الغلو والتطرف. عندما بايعهم أصبح أحد قياداتهم وهو داخل السجن. لأن قريب وواعي وحافظ وسريع البديهية فاستطاع أن يقود الأمر وهو داخل السجن.
Camp Bucca, under control of the Americans from the day after the invasion of the country. One of the largest prisons in Iraq, now known as a school of jihad. Most of the leaders of ISIS spent time there. One of them was Abu Bakr al Baghdadi, who was arrested in February 2004, almost a year after the start of the war. We pay it a visit. The former Camp Bucca can be found next to a large city in southern Iraq, Basra. To accompany us, several well-armed soldiers and a former prisoner, Abu Amara. He was accused of being an anti-American insurgent. He remained imprisoned for 7 months before being released for lack of evidence. The camp is an hour's drive away.
يا الله السلام عليكم. حمايات خارجية خارج هذا الساتر، دوريات مستمرة بالعجلات مع الطيران المستمر مع الحراس في الأبراج.
نعم.
هذه الأبراج.
There are only a few videos of this period. The camp was opened in 2003. It is named after an American firefighter who died in the Twin Towers in New York on September 11th, 2001. Inside are 20,000 prisoners. On one side are all those who are suspected of being members of jihadist groups. On the other side are soldiers of Saddam Hussein's army arrested during the fighting. It is these two groups together that will later form the Islamic State around Abu Bakr al Baghdadi. The prisoners live a hard life under tents or prefabricated buildings out in the desert. This is Abu Bakr al Baghdadi's prison record, the day of his arrest. It says that he is a Sunni in good physical condition. Occupation, secretary. For the Americans, he is not attached to any jihadist group. He was arrested by chance at a friend's home, a man who was suspected of terrorism. Camp Bucca was closed in 2009, and only a few remains are left that Abu Amara, the former prisoner, sees for the first time since his release. In all, several 100,000 men were detained there without trial.
هذا كل معتقل يدخلوه مكان يسموه الحاسبة الإلكترونية. يعني مثل أنا رقمي 313,583.
Why do you keep it?
الذكريات هذه.
Some prisoners would spend several years in Bucca.
يصير هنا مثلا 40 30 شخص اي نعم، لكن ينطون هذا نسميه احنا دوشك او مندر فهالشكل يعني من هذا الجانب ومن هذا الجانب يبقى الوسط فارغ. اي نعم.
In 2004, when al-Baghdadi was detained here, the prisoners were mixed. Sunnis, Shiites, jihadists and moderates lived side by side. Networks developed. Al-Baghdadi slept here in Section 6, which was destroyed after the camp was closed.
هذا المكان وهذه الصبات يتركز عليهم الكرفانات اللي الكم السادس. هذه الصبات على مود الكرفانات اللي ينصبن عليهن هذا الجانب وهذا الجانب.
المعلومات اللي كانت متوفرة انه هو البغدادي كان موجود بالكم السادس.
The future caliph spent 9 months there. Some of his fellow prisoners became his closest collaborators a few years later. Jihadists like Manaf al-Rawi, for example, who planned bloody attacks in Baghdad after his release and who was executed in 2013. But also Saddam Hussein's officers like Haji Bucca, a former lieutenant colonel who became one of the chief advisors of al-Baghdadi. It is behind these barbed wire fences that all these men apparently met and began to prepare for the future. We go to check this information on the other side of the globe in the United States. In Washington, we have an appointment with Anne Speckard. She is a psychologist, a specialist in jihadism. In 2007, she was hired by the US military to set up a de-radicalization program in Camp Bucca. The soldiers had already felt that there was a monster growing inside the prison.
Some of the hardcore elements would end up mixed with the people that were just picked up in sweeps. And then the military had evidence, because they had cameras going, of course, of these hardcore guys drawing in the sand and teaching the others how to make an IED.
But the American officers finally decided not to set up their de-radicalization program. For her, this is one of the causes of the formation of the future Islamic State.
We know that Abu Bakr al Baghdadi and most of the membership of ISIS today was in Camp Bucca, and they met each other and worked together there. And we put together a program to try to reach people like this and convince them that terrorism is not a good answer to solving their problems. We didn't use our program. We had it, but we didn't use it. That's a mistake. And then we got this.
It is not certain that their arguments would have slowed down al-Baghdadi and the others, but this confirms that it was truly in Bucca where they began to organize themselves. We have yet to understand how the poor child of Samara became the leader of the world jihad. Return to Iraq in Baghdad. There is an elite intelligence unit. Their name, the Falcons. They know Abu Bakr al Baghdadi's biggest secrets. Exceptionally, they allowed us to film on their premises. For their safety, their faces are blurred.
It's not allowed to film. Outside is totally not allowed.
The mission of the Falcons? To track down the leaders of ISIS and, above all, the man at the top of the pyramid. Most of their information has never been revealed to the public. They bring us a prisoner, handcuffed and blindfolded. One of their finest catches. He is one of the great religious leaders of ISIS. It was him, for example, who authorized the destruction of non-Muslim places of worship in Mosul. During the interview, he is watched closely by his jailers. It is difficult to know how he is treated, and so if he can talk to us freely.
سيدي وجهي مكشوف له. الحمد لله.
He confirms that he personally knew Abu Bakr al Baghdadi at Camp Bucca.
معتقل كامب بوكا كان يضم عناصر عناصر ريادية يسلط عليها الضوء من الطرفين، من الطرف السني ومن الطرف الشيعي. أما من الطرف السني كان إبراهيم أبو دعاء اللي هو حاليا أبو بكر البغدادي، كان في الكم السادس.
But at the time, according to him, the future caliph passed rather unnoticed.
يتميز بصفات الإبهام والإيهام والانعزال والانطواء. كان إمام وخطيب، نعم كان منعزل، كان منطوي، كان إمام وخطيب. تتسم خطبته بخطبة باردة خالية من الكاريزما واستقطاب النفوس، ماكو هذا الشيء. يعني يبدو الرجل، ما أدري هل هذا كان طبعه أم كان هذا تطبع، أنه يحاول ما يتصرف أي تصرف يسلط عليه الأضواء. لكن ما كنت أتصور أنه هذا الإنسان اللي كان يخطبنا في بوكا في الكم السادس يتحول إلى إنسان آخر. يعني اختلاف باستطاعتنا أن نقول جذري، اختلاف جذري.
The Falcons will explain the transformation of this shy little imam. In a neighbouring room, they lead us to a wall lined with photos.
هذه المجموعة اللي أمامنا تعتبر أهم وأخطر المتهمين لداعش الإرهابي الذين كانوا جميعهم معتقلين من قبل القوات الأمريكية في سجن بوكا. معظم هذه القيادات قتلت، والبعض الآخر لا يزال والبعض الآخر معتقل بالسجون العراقية ينتظر المحاكمة، وقليل جدا من عندهم هارب. طبعا هذا هو أبو بكر البغدادي، أحد الصور أبو بكر البغدادي.
In prison, al-Baghdadi frequented the elite of the Iraqi jihad. Due to a lack of evidence, the Americans released him at the end of 2004. And thanks to the new friends that he met in Bucca, he got close to the biggest terrorist in Iraq at the time, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. Zarqawi led a campaign of terror with a growing number of attacks, kidnappings and executions. The Falcons show us this document in which al-Baghdadi's small group places itself under the authority of Zarqawi.
وهذا البيان اللي صدر عن هذه التشكيل بمبايعة الأمير أبو مصعب الزرقاوي. علاقة قوية بيناتهم بحيث خلاه يقتنع ويكون ضمن المبايعين والمناصرين لأبو مصعب الزرقاوي.
The Falcons' cabinets hold a treasure trove of information, to begin with unpublished photos of Abu Bakr al Baghdadi.
هذه صورة إلى أخرى، وهذا تنسب إلى هذه صورة أخرى إلى في شبابه في عمر متقدم وهو يرتدي الزي العربي. هذه صورة أخرى إلى وهو ذو ذقن عالي، أيضا هذه صورة قديمة. هذه صورة إلى وهو في معتقل في بوكا، وهنا واضح أنه يرتدي البدلة الصفراء مال الاعتقال السجنية الخاصة.
Through each of their operations, they gather new clues about the leader of the Caliphate. At the end of 2013, for example, they spotted him in an isolated house north of Baghdad. They arrived too late, but here is what they discovered.
أبو بكر البغدادي يرقد في هذا المكان، سوي له مخبأ سري في الأرض، يدخل بهذا المخبأ من هنا، وبالضبط هذه صورة المخبأ له.
Al-Baghdadi lived in hiding then, even before the Caliphate was declared, like Saddam Hussein before him, who was arrested in a hideout like this one in 2003. Inside, the Falcons found weapons and a belt of explosives, no doubt to avoid being captured alive, and personal affairs. Remarkable documents which allow us to better understand the Caliph's way of life.
طبعا من داهمنا بيته عثرنا على هذه الصور الحديثة له، هذه وهذه وهذه. طبعا هاي صور لزوجاته، زوجاته اللي واحدة اسمها أسماء فوزي محمد الكوبيسي والإسراء رجب القيسي. هذه المستمسكات الرسمية الثبوتية لعائلته، هذه زوجته وبناته وأطفاله. هذه عثرت على أوراق مكتوبة بخط اليد وهي تنسب إلى أبو بكر البغدادي.
This notebook has little hearts everywhere and hateful texts, the prose of Abu Bakr al Baghdadi.
هنا جاي يتكلم مع أحد الأمراء التنظيم، يقول له أنا أريد أضرب الأمريكان واليهود اللي موجودين في كردستان، يقول لهم على بركة الله، يبارك لهم.
According to the Falcons, the Caliph was surrounded. They hope to take him out soon. If you manage to neutralize him, would that be the end of ISIS?
قطعا لن تنتهي. داعش فكر وليس أشخاص، ولكن تضعف كثيرا.
The war is far from over, and we soon have confirmation. A few hours after our meeting with the Falcons, we receive a call from our Iraqi guide, panicked. Someone called him to threaten our entire team. We have to leave the hotel as soon as possible. We find him again. He does not want to show us his face.
We don't trust anybody. It's Iraq. It's not. هذا أسوأ. This is the worst country in the world.
Who is threatening us? It's impossible to know. Our guide and driver takes us to another ultra-secure hotel, which mainly hosts diplomats. To enter, you have to go through a series of checkpoints and inspections.
We have a reservation. Yeah. French television. Yeah, 3 rooms.
The man on the phone told me he could kill us at any time, and with the license number of my car, they can catch me outside my home.
We are going to have to go on without our companions. We're safe for tonight. Tomorrow we will leave Baghdad to continue our investigation in the north of the country. Erbil, 350 kilometers from Baghdad. It is the capital of Kurdistan, an autonomous region of the country. We are trying to understand why so many Iraqis such as al Baghdadi joined the ranks of jihadists in the mid-2000s. We have an appointment in one of the city's prisons. About 50 prisoners are behind these walls. Among them, a 24-year-old Iraqi woman who was arrested just before setting off her belt of explosives. Dora is almost at home here. The inmates have the right to leave their cells during the day. A slightly surprising prison. Behind these charming little curtains, her bedroom cell.
أنا أعمل هاي الأشياء يعني نفسي أنا أعمل مخدتي هيك أحط لها وخيط لها. أنا واقفة من 2008 يعني ما كبرانة ما بعرف ليش أحب اللون الوردي ملابسي مال أولاد صغار يعني هيك ما أنا مدى أكبر حالي ما بعرف ليش يعني يمكن هو عقلي مدى يكبر.
عايش مع كم مرة هون؟
20.
إيش هو؟
أول شيء هو القرآن طبعاً هو صديقي بكل مكان بعدين
And what is that?
هاي تعلمني يعني صبرني على حياة بلا توتر يعني.
Books of a personal development star. Nowadays, this Cinderella decorates her fridge. But in 2008, Doa, the suicide bomber, wanted to kill Americans. The reason for this change? The desire for vengeance. She says her husband, whom she married at the age of 15, was tortured to death by US soldiers in 2007.
يعني هيك اتفقنا وفي تليفوني يعني كنت أحكي ومسجل هذا الشيء إنه أنا رح أفجر نفسي على تكنة عسكرية وقال لي رح تقتلين 200 نفر. أنا قلت له كلش قليل على 200 نفر يعني خلي أكتر أحسن. قال قديش تريدي؟ قلت له 1000 واحد مقابل زوجي 1000 أمريكي مقابل زوجي.
Doa has changed after 9 years in prison. Her relatives, however, remain die-hard jihadists. We managed to get their pictures. One of her brothers, right on the picture, went to carry out jihad in Syria. He died in battle. Her second brother languishes in an Iraqi prison waiting to be executed. He was head of an ISIS unit. Her father is detained in Syria, accused of being one of the main financiers of the Islamic State. But one of her family members has an even closer connection with the current caliph. Her older sister Saja is none other than the former wife of the public enemy number one, the second wife of al Baghdadi. We asked Doa to call her sister with the agreement of the prison director.
الو السلام عليكم. وعليكم السلام حبيبتي، كيفك شو اخبارك؟ الحمد لله بخير، انت شلونك؟ الحمد لله الحمد لله. ايه لا تخافي. يلا حبيبتي الله وياك، سلمي لي على ماما، بوسي لي ايديها باش، قولها زينه والله. ماشي يلا السلام عليكم.
For weeks we've been trying to meet up with her sister Saja, the former Mrs. al Baghdadi. She lives in Lebanon, where she fled to with her children. After long negotiations, she agreed to meet, provided, of course, that we do not give any information that could reveal where she is hiding. We take Saja to an anonymous house somewhere in the country. In the car is Saja, 8 years old, the daughter of Abu Bakr al Baghdadi. Lebanese intelligence services have confirmed this relationship with DNA testing. In front of the camera, Saja is wearing a hijab so as not to be recognized. Normally, she does not hide her face. Saja has 4 children, twins from a previous marriage, Saja, the daughter of al Baghdadi, and a little boy with her new husband.
سريمشي دادي دادي، بعد لي عمري لأقعد عندك شوي، أعطيني هاي الكورة.
Her first husband died fighting the Americans. A few months later, her father decided she should remarry. In 2007, she became the second wife of al Baghdadi.
ما له أي مشاركة بالمقاومة حسب علمي أبداً. ما كنت أعرف إنه مقاوم أبداً. إنسان يدرس ويرجع للبيت، بس يدرس بالكلية ويرجع للبيت. فهو كان يتفهم ويعرف الطفل كتير، بيحب الأطفال.
At the time, al-Baghdadi was an important part of the jihadist movement. Against all odds, Saja claims she did not know, and that she left because she was jealous of his first wife. She left without knowing she was pregnant.
هو تركني أطلع على راحتي يعني، لأنه عرف من البداية أنا فكرة الزواج ما عجبتني. ورحت بعد ما ولدت عمر البنت 2 شهر، قام اتصل، عرف إنه أنا ولدانة، اتصل فيني وقال إنه البنت بينه وبينه، بيشوفها هو بشوفها أنا، وإلها حقوق وإلي حقوق إذا أنا بدي، بس أنا بعدت يعني.
Did he ask you to come back?
طلب كذا مرة، بس أنا خلص. لا بعد بيومين من المكالمة التقيت فيه ورمى يمين الطلاق وخلصنا.
Today she has one fear that al-Baghdadi will send men to kidnap her daughter, especially as she says that she condemns ISIS ideology.
صار لي عادي جوجو، طبيعي، لا تطلعي بأي مكان ماشي.
When she arrived in Lebanon, she spent a year in prison with her children. The authorities suspected she still had ties to her former husband.
والله أنا شعوري ولا ما شعوري، أنا بتخذ قلت لكم من الآية الكريمة إنه ولا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. إن شاء الله يعمل الزلمة كل الإجرام كل الإرهاب، ما خص المرأة ما خصها. بدي أقول إنه هاي الطفلة اللي جرم العالم كله انحط على كتفه. هاي عم تلاقي مصير ابصارها النور على كوكب الارض، يعني بدون اي جرم، بدون اي ذنب. يعني شو ذنبها هي اذا كان العالم كله بيعاديه؟ هي بتضل طفله، شو خاصه يعني بالحروب وبالارهاب وبال.
Saja described al-Baghdadi as a caring father. We spoke to another witness whose testimony has never been released until now, that of a former personal slave of the caliph. Suzanne is 14. She comes from the Yazidi minority persecuted by ISIS. She paints a different picture of him. When she was captured in 2014, she found herself with other young girls in front of al-Baghdadi and several of his men. She was only 12 years old. How did you know that it was al-Baghdadi?
سهرتي من المدان سب دارا ولا شما سهروا بقدر رشوشين بو نقل مدان دين برد سام غريب خدامة.
Yazidi women and girls captured by ISIS are treated as slaves and almost all are raped. Several months after her capture, Suzanne tried to escape the clutches of al-Baghdadi with other girls. They were caught. How did they beat you? After 2 years of captivity, Suzanne finally managed to escape. She took refuge in Germany in October. She spoke to the CIA, who were trying to collect as much information as they could about al-Baghdadi. But hundreds or even thousands of other women are still held captive, awaiting the end of ISIS and its leader. In the mid-2000s, al-Baghdadi climbs in the hierarchy of the Islamic State in Iraq, the new name of al-Qaeda in the country. In 2006, Zarqawi, his former boss, was killed by the Americans. Al-Baghdadi becomes more and more essential within the organization, and 4 years later, at the age of 39, he takes charge. We have an appointment with a researcher and advisor to the Iraqi government's fight against terrorism, Hisham al-Hashemi. He closely followed al-Baghdadi's rise to power in 2010. At the time, the Islamic State of Iraq was still under the control of al-Qaeda and its leader.
وتم اختيار البغدادي ثم أرسلت رسالة إلى بن لادن أن تنظيم القاعدة في العراق اختار أبو بكر البغدادي.
And so al-Baghdadi declared his allegiance to the godfather of global terrorism. And he immediately made his mark by spreading chaos. He unleashed an unprecedented wave of violence in the country.
طيلة هذه الفترة كان البغدادي معه القليل من الرجال، القليل من المال، بدأ يركز على العمليات النوعية الكبيرة في ما تعرف بغزوات بغداد أو الأيام الدامية لبغداد.
For example, these horrifying days in October 2010. Saturday 30th, a car bomb exploded 70 kilometers from Baghdad, 26 dead. The next day, al-Baghdadi's men took 120 Christians hostage in the capital's cathedral during Mass. 58 were killed. 3 days later, 13 simultaneous attacks in the city, 76 victims.
كان يضرب المراكز الأمنية، القضائية، الخدمية، الوزارات، ويعمل على ضرب ما يعرف بالانسجام المجتمعي يحاول أن يضرب ذلك الانسجام الذي بدأ يتقارب بين الشيعة والسنة.
In 2011, the start of the conflict in Syria allowed him to extend his dark influence a little further. He was part of establishing a branch of his organization in a neighboring country, the Al-Nusra Front. Now his men were fighting in Iraq and Syria.
في عام 2013 في نيسان أعلن البغدادي توحيد فرع القاعدة في الشام مع توحيده في العراق تحت عنوان تنظيم الدولة الإسلامية في العراق والشام الذي يعرف مختصراً باسم
The Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, in Arabic, ISIS. The world soon learns this name. Al-Baghdadi broke ties with Al-Qaeda and is now in sole command. This is the first time that a terrorist group has dominated such a large territory, straddling Iraq and Syria. Millions of people live under his control. ISIS kills, imprisons, tortures. Soldiers and journalists are kidnapped. Their captivity is dramatized. They appear dressed in brightly colored suits in reference to the ones the Americans made the Iraqis wear in Camp Bucca or in the notorious Abu Ghraib prison. The head of ISIS does not stop there. His men filmed the killing of hundreds of hostages, sometimes with a child in the role of executioner. An unprecedented violence condemned even in the ranks of Al-Qaeda. We return to Mosul near the front with General Abdel Ghani al-Assadi. He marches around surrounded by his men. They were the ones who liberated part of the city. He hopes to take back the rest soon. But in the meantime, a question arises. Where is al-Baghdadi hiding? Is he still alive?
I hope we will capture him alive, to show him what it means to be a true Iraqi.
If al-Baghdadi is still alive, is he still as influential? Does he still have power over his army? His last sign of life is an audio message recorded 5 months ago, in which he calls on his soldiers to fight to the death. Only history will tell if he will abide by that principle himself, or if one day he will have to answer for his crimes in court.